and paper, into the air, where the toy flew for about 10 seconds. Orville's older brother, Wilbur, ran to grab the helicopter as it reached the grass. "There you are, boys. I hope you like it," their father, Bishop Milton Wright, said. Orville grinned.
"Of course we do. Wait till we show Mother."
Milton Wright chuckled. "Yes, knowing your mother, I have no doubt that she'll be just as interested in a flying machine as you two are. Now, don't forget you still have your chores to do before dinner."
"Yes, Father,"
the two boys answered together. Bishop Wright walked inside the house while the two brothers took turns pulling the rubber band and twirling the helicopter high into the air. Their sister, 4-year-old Catherine, joined them and insisted that she, too, have a turn flying the new toy. The next day, as Orville sat in his second-grade classroom in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, he could not concentrate on what the teacher was saying. All he could think about was the flying machine his father had brought home the night before, and how he could improve it. He wondered whether the helicopter would fly twice as high if it were twice as big, or would it fly for twice as long? And since it had 2 propellers, would it go higher if it had 4 propellers, or 6? The year was 1878, and no answers to such questions existed. Orville reminded himself that only insects, birds, and a few reptiles could fly, and they were not telling their secrets to anyone. The next day, Orville found some wood behind the outhouse and started building his own flying machine in the hope of finding answers to some of his questions. Wilbur, who was 11 years old, was a great help in the endeavor. But both boys were disappointed when they could not get their homemade flying machine to lift off the ground under rubber band power. Orville was not used to failure. Just about everything he tried came easily to him. Just a week before, he had complained that he was bored using McGuffey's second reader, and the principal had declared that any second-grade student who could read a passage he or she selected from the book without making an error could go on to the third reader. Since Orville did not want to take any chances, he memorized the entire section he was allocated to read. When it was his turn to read in front of the principal and his teacher, he was so nervous that he held the book upside down. But still he managed to recite the passage perfectly from memory and was allowed to pass on to the next reader. The 2 youngest Wright brothers, along with their 2 older brothers, Rushlin, who was 10 years older than Orville, and Lauren, who was 8 years older, played with the toy helicopter until they wore it out. Regrettably, neither Orville nor Wilbur was able to make another one that would fly. The boys did not have the right tools to work with, but that all changed just before Orville's 10th birthday. Soon they would have the equipment to make all kinds of things. It was June 1881, and the Wright family was moving again. The family had moved several times in Orville's lifetime, but this move was one that Orville looked forward to. The family was on its way to Richmond, Indiana, close to Orville's maternal grandparents. Grandpa Kerner was the most fascinating man Orville knew, mostly because he was a carriage maker and had a workshop filled with woodworking tools. And from these tools, he could make just about anything he set his mind to. Although Grandpa Kerner was a fastidious German immigrant, Orville hoped that he would trust him and Wilbur to use his tools. As soon as they arrived in Richmond, Orville and Wilbur begged to go to their grandparents' farm to see the carriage shop, set up in one of the dozen buildings on the property. The 2 brothers were intrigued with the place. All sorts of metal and woodworking tools were arrayed in the carriage shop. But what really piqued the boys' interest was Grandpa's lathe for turning wood. Right then and there, Orville and Wilbur decided that they were going to build a lathe of their own. They assembled it in the barn at the back of their house in Richmond. It was a lot of work and challenged their ingenuity, but the boys kept at it. The lathe, like Grandpa's, was powered.